The Florida Gators are adding to their 2026 recruiting class. G'Nivre Carr, you are a Florida Gator.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Happy Sunday night. Damn, it feels good to do that again. I am Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work of New York Giants on SI. And it's been a while since we've had the shades on for a live show, but we are back. The Florida Gators got another commit for their 2026 recruiting class with G'Nivre Carr is there. And oh my goodness, I love it. So G'Nivre Carr is someone, and I'm so sorry, by the way, let's just get this out there. I am so sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation of that name. I have genuinely Googled it and not been able to find the pronunciation. So I'm rolling with G'Nivre Carr. I think that's the way to go about it. But he was on campus this weekend, has committed to the Florida Gators now officially. I don't think that he'll be the last commit, even today, but this week as well. G'Nivre Carr is a 3-star on On3 and 24/7 and is a 4-star on ESPN and Rivals. And we spoke about him on the Thursday show of Locked On Gators, where we spoke about all of the visitors that were supposed to be on campus, some canceled, all the visitors that were supposed to be on campus this weekend. And when we spoke about him, first off, he was the second player that we spoke about. But also, he's someone that when we got to his section, we spoke about him and we said, hey, think he's going to be a Gator. Like Florida has felt like they're in the lead, and now they are continuing that. An IMG kid, which is always big. You know, I know some people feel certain not so great ways about just IMG in general, but building a pipeline at a school where big time players will go, I think that's huge for recruiting. Landon, what's up, buddy? Said, we expecting any more? I am. Like I said, look, I will say that, and this is a thing that we spoke about last week as well, that Florida is going to get a few commits this weekend. I don't know if they're going to be commits that are announced right there, or if they're going to be commits that it's like, hey, I'm going to commit to you, but I've got this date scheduled. You know, we spoke about it quite a bit in the past month or so, where there's a lot of kids who have commitment dates scheduled between July 1st and July 5th. And Florida is going to land some of those, but I don't know if, you know, if I'm committing July 5th, if I tell you tonight that, hey, I'm going to be a Florida Gator, but I'm not announcing until July 5th, Florida under Billy Napier has typically not been super pushy about landing those commitments. So I do think that, or I know that Florida is getting a few commits this weekend. But as far as who's announcing, truly, we don't know. But I will tell you that I think June's going to be a very busy month, especially with the recruiting timeline change, because now July is a dead period. And so that what used to be an incredibly busy month of July recruiting-wise, I think that's going to be June now. And so Florida, I think they're going to have a really busy June. I'll say that, and a really busy early July. Because again, like a lot of the kids committing July 1st through July 5th, not much is changing in those few days. So they're going to have that decision made. But G'Nivre Carr is someone who his visit schedule was Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee, with a commitment date that he had scheduled for June 25th. And we don't know yet with the visits if those are going to happen or not still with the other schools. But we do know that he had a commitment date set for June 25th, and that has now obviously been moved up to June 1st. T, appreciate you. Shades are on point. But yeah, Florida landing a commitment is huge. Like I said, I don't think it'll be their only commitment of the weekend. Again, whether those come public or not, we'll see. I do think that there's going to be at least one more that comes public, hopefully today. And if it's today, we will be going live for that. But G'Nivre Carr, like I said, 3-star on three. On three, he's the 41st ranked interior offensive lineman in the country, 80th player in the state of Florida. On 24/7, he is the 58th ranked interior offensive lineman in the country, 81st player in the state of Florida. On ESPN, he is a 4-star, 281st player nationally, 13th interior offensive lineman nationally, 48th player in the state of Florida. You got on Rivals, he is a 4-star, 24th player, 24th interior offensive lineman in the country, 44th player in the state of Florida. Anybody in the chat, we'll get to you in the second half of this. Don't worry, I'm not ignoring you intentionally. We'll get to that in the second half, and we'll talk about all that. But G'Nivre Carr, look, you could talk about him being a 3-star or a 4-star. Like I've said, for the 2026 class and beyond, until things change, I really am not caring about what their ranking is on any recruiting site. I think that it's fine information to share, similar to PFF grades. I don't care about PFF grades, but people like to know the information, and so we can talk about that. But for me, I am putting an added emphasis on who they have offers from, who they have visits scheduled with, and that's the emphasis I'm putting on, just because I feel like these recruiting sites have become so shamelessly about, we're going to go, if you don't go to this camp, we're going to drop you. For Houselift saying, what's up with the sunglasses? Billy Napier tweets the sunglass emoji when there's a commit, so we wear sunglasses when there's a commit live show. That's what we do here. But for the rankings, like I said, I don't care too much about that. I'm looking at your offer sheet, and for G'Nivre Carr, his offer sheet is, committed to Florida. His offer sheet includes Tennessee, Miami, Georgia, and Alabama as his primary recruiting schools, but he's also got offers from South Carolina, Auburn, Florida State, Michigan, USC, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Louisville, Syracuse, North Carolina, Purdue, Duke, Georgia Tech, UCF, West Virginia, NC State, and then a bunch of Group of 5 schools. I only named the Power 4 schools, and that's his offer sheet. And I look at that and I go, well, just looking at the schools that are in his primary, that are in his top 5 or were in his top 5. Now it's obviously Florida. But when I look at it and I go, all right, well, Florida is obviously Florida. Tennessee, they've produced quite a few NFL offensive linemen in recent years. Miami, I think the offensive line, we'll say reputation is a bit much, but I also still think that they're good at their jobs. I just don't think they're as elite as people like to say. Georgia, NFL offensive linemen out the wazoo there, and Alabama, a lot of NFL offensive linemen there. So I think that looking at that, that's what I care more about than what's his ranking. I don't care, honestly. I don't give a damn. And also, just based on the film, I think G'Nivre Carr is a good football player. So I'm cool with it. He's got work to do, of course. Every high school player does, especially on the offensive line. But I think he's got the tools that you can develop. And I think that that's what this offensive line staff has consistently been recruiting for, that they've consistently been looking at it and saying, hey, let's get guys that we can develop and that we can turn into legit players and legit prospects. And I think Florida's done a very good job of doing that, again, pretty consistently. We are about to talk about where this Florida Gators recruiting class ranks now. And we are going to talk about whatever you guys have in the chat, or I'm not going to say who might be next, because that could be very outdated if that commit happens shortly. Not that I'm dropping a name specifically, but we're just going to avoid that. But we will talk about where the class ranks and any questions you guys have in the chat when we get back with Locked On Gators. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all of my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's pretty easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. So you can track all of your accounts, all of your investments, all of your spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start actually building your wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And like I mentioned, G'Nivre Carr has committed to the Florida Gators. They've now got their third commit of this 2026 recruiting class, which of course we hope that number is higher, and we expect that number to be higher rather quickly. But for Florida, you're now actually getting your commitments. That's again, I mean, this is a two-man class up until this. So adding anybody is big, but adding talented football players like G'Nivre Carr is also big. Geneva Carr is the second highest rated player on the in the Florida Gators 2026 recruiting class with on 3. It's Will Griffin, Geneva Carr, and then Jameer Perez, who committed a few weeks ago out of Ohio. Most of my money goes towards medical stuff, bills, and eating. I mean, look, we're serial go out to restaurants, so I get it. But hey, I'm not going to stop. I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to stop doing it. And the Florida Gators there now landing another commit in this class gives them their third. Again, this is obviously way lighter than Florida wants to be, or way lighter than Florida is targeting. But again, I almost said it's May. It's June 1st, and there's a ton of time to figure that out and to grow there and to get your class bigger and filled out. I mean, we know where this class was. They were 74th last year at the end of the season, basically, or toward the end of the season, and then finished number 7. So I don't necessarily care where they are in June. Like I've said earlier, though, if they didn't have at least some bodies in the class by the end of June, I'd be concerned. But that is obviously no longer the case there. The Florida Gators doing what they can, closing the gap. Again, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a quick thing. But Florida is closing the gap here with these recruits and landing quality commits. That's also a very important part, at least to me, is landing the quality commits. I'd understand, again, I get it. 3-star this, whatever. Florida on 3 is now the 51st class in the country. I'd love to know where Florida ranks on 24/7, but they have not updated their rankings yet, as in they haven't added Carr to the class yet on 24/7. But Florida, adding quality commits, an 88.78 average rating for Florida gets them higher than I think anybody is expecting from a class that's 51st on 3. It has them, I don't even know, it has a top 25 nationally in terms of average recruiting ranking. I saw also we had a question before where it was Crazy Anime Gamer said, realistically, does Florida have at least a chance at making the playoffs? I'm a pessimist, so I always assume the worst, unfortunately. So, and Crazy Anime Gamer, I'm gonna call you CAG. All right. I think that for me, the expectation is Florida should make the college football playoff this year. I think this is a college football playoff roster. I understand the schedule is difficult. I think that talent, Florida should be making the college football playoff. It comes down to coaching for me. I think this is a college football playoff roster. And for me, I think the bar for, hey, I won't call for your job is at 8 wins. Regular season, 8 wins. That's where I'm at. If you win 8 games, miss the college football playoff, but win 8 games, I won't call for your job. I won't be happy with it, but I won't call for your job. But that's where I land. So I understand you being a pessimist. I try to be more pessimistic about my favorite schools or my favorite teams than usual. But I think that they've done a fantastic job building this roster. It's just up to coaching now. It's as simple as that for me. It's just up to coaching. And then we've got I'm not going to get too excited, especially if he's still taking the other visits. Yeah, that's the thing. I want to know. I'm hoping that we'll get an answer on that soon, hopefully today, about those other visits, if they're still going to take place for G'Nivre Carr or not. But I'm going to hope that they don't. I'm going to hope that Florida can get him to shut it down. And for me, the way that I look at it, at least, is if you had all these visits scheduled with a commitment date set for after those visits, and then you go on a visit and you say, you know what, screw the commitment date, I'm going to commit right now. then to me, logically, the way that I think about it, which is obviously going to be different, each individual handles everything differently. But the way that I think about it is, if I have a commitment date set and I say, screw that commitment date, I'm going to move it up right now, I'm ready to commit, I would say screw the visits behind it as well. Because if I felt confident enough in Florida to commit, why do I need to go on the other visits? Why would I waste it? If I had a commitment date set and I moved the commitment date because I felt so good about Florida, I would cancel the other visits. And look, I get everybody that wants to say, hey, you should commit, you should cancel those visits if you're committed. You shouldn't go on those. I also look at the side and I'm like, look, like these kids are never, ever going to get to go through an experience like this again, unless they're in the portal. And even then, love's not the same, right? So I look at it and I say, hey, a lot of us will never have to make a decision with millions of people relying on it. And I'm not being dramatic when I say that either. Florida fans alone, you're going to have, as far as Florida fans that care about recruiting, you're going to have at least a few 100,000, right? Tennessee, Miami, Georgia, Alabama, just from those 5 brands alone, you have a lot of fans that care about your decision. And so many of us will never have a decision of that magnitude. So I try to not bash anybody too much there. Jake Slaughter was a 3-star recruit. Napier's system identified the talent and coached him up. I don't think Napier's system identified the talent because he was here for Mullen. But Napier kept him and developed him and got him to an All-American potential first-round pick. I'm not too sold on that part. Not a knock on Slaughter. It's just the fact of playing center and being undersized. Hester needs to pop, hopefully. And Slaughter was a Mullen recruit. Yes, Slaughter was a Mullen recruit. There's always a chance you could change your mind. Before Abby Wambach committed to Florida, she was committed to LSU and wasn't going to take her other visits. That changed after Florida. Yeah, look, I get it. That's why I see both sides of it, because I don't want a player to cancel their other visits and then regret making this decision. Like that's why I understand Napier not being the kind of coach that's like, hey, you got to cancel your visits if you commit to us. Because if you go to those other schools and you say, hey, I want to go to those other schools, I don't want you to come here if you don't want to be here. Like I want people who want to be Gators. So that's why I'm like, yeah, go ahead, go on your visit. I'm fine with it. Like I said, as a recruit, I think I would cancel it. As a fan, I think it's great to cancel it. But I also understand the other side of it of saying, hey, go make sure this is the place you want to be. Because when you're here, we want you to be here for a few years. We don't want you to come here and then portal because you're miserable. So I see both sides of it. And also, if you can go on all those visits and still say, yeah, Florida's the place I want to be, then I think you've answered it and there's no doubt there. And I have no qualm with a kid taking his visits, especially if they were already scheduled. I have no qualm with it. I think he's a damn good football player. I know the ranking. I think he's better than the On3 24/7 rankings. I think ESPN has it pretty accurate with being the 13th best interior offensive lineman in the country. Like I think ESPN's doing a pretty good job of that one, which is a rare thing to say, but it's what I'm saying. And so, yeah, G'Nivre Carr, Florida Gator, hopefully not going to be the last time we go live tonight. And we will be having our normal scheduled program. Like we can go live 6 times tonight. We're still having our normal scheduled program tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time on YouTube. Comes out at 3 a.m. Eastern time on audio. And yeah, I think I think we're going to have a huge June. The sunglasses, the shades, they're ready to go live as often as we need to go live. I have actively told people, if I have to leave further than 15 minutes from my house, don't invite me during June, because I'm hoping it's a big June. I'm expecting it to be a big June. And hopefully, on the recruiting trail at least, the Gator Boys stay hot. I am Brandon Olsen, and we will see you. Look, I'm not even going to say tomorrow. I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say that we'll see you next time. At the absolute latest, tomorrow morning. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI. And as always, I will see you all next time.